When my boss told me, "If you're not happy with your salary, the door is open," I walked out. I don't think he expected what came next. My name is Evelyn Dorsey and I was 32 when this happened. 4 years I worked as a project coordinator at a mid-sized manufacturing company. I wasn't just another employee. I was the one staying late to meet deadlines, fixing mistakes others made, and keeping the entire department running smoothly. I sacrificed weekends, skipped birthdays, and even missed my sister's wedding rehearsal because work always came first. I thought my loyalty and hard work would pay off one day. Then one afternoon I stumbled across something that left me sick to my stomach. A male coworker, someone with far less responsibility than me, was earning nearly 20% more. He had been with the company for less time and rarely stayed late. He never carried the weight I did, but he was being rewarded while I was ignored. I went to my boss, Grant Holloway, thinking maybe this was a mistake. He was known for being arrogant, but I still hoped he'd see reason. I explained the situation calmly, pointing out my contributions and asking for a raise that matched the effort I put in. He leaned back in his chair, gave me that smug little smirk he always wore, and said words I'll never forget. "If you're not happy with the salary, the door is open." That was it. No appreciation, no acknowledgement of the years I had given, just dismissal. My stomach dropped, my hands trembled, and for a moment I couldn't believe he was serious. Then something inside me snapped. Without another word I stood up, grabbed my things and walked out. I felt humiliated, furious, but also strangely free. He thought he had the power, but that day he had no idea what kind of fire he had just lit inside me. I gripped the steering wheel as I drove, my eyes stinging with tears. Every mile felt heavier, and the words Grant had thrown at me echoed in my head like poison. I had given so much of myself to that place, and in return I was treated like nothing. As I sat there crying, memories came back uninvited. The nights I stayed behind while everyone else went home, the weekends I sacrificed, the family gatherings I missed just to keep things running. I thought all of it meant something. I thought it would be recognized. Instead, I was tossed aside like I didn't matter. That betrayal cut deeper than I expected. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking. When I stepped inside, Miles looked at me and knew immediately. He didn't press me. He just sat with me, listened as I poured everything out, every detail, every hurt. My voice cracked as I admitted how small and discarded I felt, how part of me wondered if I should just go back, apologize, beg to keep my place. Miles shook his head, his voice steady but kind. "Don't crawl back to someone who doesn't respect you," he told me. "You're worth more than that." His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. This wasn't just about a paycheck or a job title. It was about my worth. I had allowed myself to be undervalued for too long, and Grant's cruelty had shown me the truth. That night, sitting in silence beside Miles, something shifted inside me. I wasn't broken, I was angry, and that anger was starting to feel like power. I realized I couldn't let Grant walk away after treating me like trash. I wasn't going to crawl. I was going to rise. And deep down I knew this was only the beginning of my revenge. I started by mapping the local market. I spent evenings scanning websites, company listings, and LinkedIn pages, looking for firms that did the kind of work I knew inside out. Quietly, I made a list of rivals who seemed organized and professional, the kind of places that would appreciate someone who knew how to fix projects that were falling apart. What I already knew about Holloway Manufacturing made my search easier. Grant's clients were fragile. Many had complained about missed deadlines and unclear invoices. Contracts were scattered, records half-finished, and vendor bills sometimes went unpaid until someone raised a fuss. Those weaknesses weren't mysteries to me. They were failures I had seen for years. I wrote each problem down, the specific accounts affected, and the suppliers who had been ignored. I reached out to a few old contacts, not with accusations but with questions. I called former vendors and asked how things were going. I met one supplier for coffee and listened while he described months of late payments and broken promises. I let them talk and took notes. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Dissatisfaction, frustration, and a real hunger for a better partner. Using that knowledge, I quietly started conversations with companies that had been burned. I didn't gossip about Grant. I offered solutions. I explained how better communication and clear paperwork could save time and money. I spoke about systems and follow-through, the same systems I'd used to keep projects moving when everything else was falling apart. As those discussions moved forward, I sketched a plan. I would not only find a better role for myself, but I would help competitors present a reliable alternative. If clients saw a real difference, they would leave hollow promises for solid results. It felt strategic and fair. I wasn't out for cruelty. I wanted to build something stronger than what Grant had created, and in doing so watch his careless empire begin to unravel. Every move was deliberate. I kept my contacts discreet, my offers practical, and my aim clear: restore balance for those hurt by his careless management. No. I decided it was time to take a real step forward, so I reached out to Clara Whitfield. She worked high up at one of the firms I had been studying, and I remembered the way she once spoke to me at an industry event. She noticed details others overlooked, and more importantly, she respected effort when she saw it. I drafted a message carefully, explained my situation in broad strokes, and asked if she would be open to a meeting. Her response came faster than I expected. She remembered me and suggested we meet for lunch. Sitting across from her, I felt nervous but determined. I told her about my background, the years of experience I carried, and what I wanted now. Not just a job, but a chance to truly make an impact. Clara listened closely, nodding at all the right points, her expression serious but warm. When she spoke, her words lifted a weight I had carried for far too long. She said she had always admired the way I carried myself in difficult projects and that people like me didn't come around often. Then she made her offer. A role with authority, fair compensation, and proper support. It was everything I had been denied before, everything I knew I deserved. I didn't pretend. I told her directly that I wanted to bring everything I knew to her side, not only to build her company stronger but also to pull business away from Grant. For a moment I wondered if she might frown or caution me, but instead she leaned back, considered my words, and smiled. She didn't discourage me at all. In fact, she promised the tools and backing I would need. Walking away from that meeting, my heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by exhaustion and resentment. I wasn't someone's workhorse anymore. I was stepping into a role where I had both value and voice. I felt empowered not just because of the position but because someone finally recognized my worth and was willing to invest in it. This was the start of something new. I began reaching out to familiar names, people I hadn't spoken to in a while but who had always been honest with me. Some were vendors, others long-term clients who had grown tired of endless excuses. I kept my approach simple. I let them know where I was now and what I could offer. When I explained my role at Clara's firm, I made sure to highlight what mattered most: clarity, timeliness, and fairness. I told them exactly how things would be handled, how payments would never linger, how communication would stay open. I didn't need to speak poorly of anyone. The truth of their own frustrations was already there. My only job was to present a choice that felt safe and reliable. The first few responses were cautious, but I could hear the relief in their voices. They remembered me as someone who kept promises, someone who solved problems instead of creating them. A handful were willing to test the waters, moving smaller accounts over to see if my assurances held true. I threw myself into those deals, making sure every detail was spotless. Slowly the shift began. One client referred another. Then a vendor who had once sworn off manufacturing contracts entirely decided to give us a try. Each success brought quiet satisfaction. I could almost picture Grant sitting in his office, watching contracts slip through his fingers without understanding how or why. I didn't brag and I didn't gloat. Every email I sent, every meeting I arranged stayed professional and respectful. The results spoke for themselves. People wanted consistency and I gave them exactly that. With every new account secured, I felt the weight of my past fade further away. For years I had been ignored, dismissed, underpaid. Now I was proving my worth in the most practical way possible, by showing that I could succeed where Grant had failed. And as his grip on those relationships weakened, my quiet confidence only grew stronger. Success was finally within my reach, yet I couldn't silence the unease creeping into my thoughts. Each time another client chose us, a flicker of guilt surfaced. I wondered if I was crossing a line, if I was letting bitterness guide me. The hours were long, the responsibility heavy, and some nights I lay awake asking myself whether I was becoming the very thing I despised. Miles noticed my restlessness before I admitted it aloud. One evening, as I sat staring blankly at my laptop, he put a hand on my shoulder and spoke softly. "You're not tearing him down just to watch him fall," he reminded me. "You're giving people what they've wanted all along: honesty and respect." His words steadied me, but the doubts didn't vanish entirely. While building the new team, I felt the weight of leadership in a way I never had before. People looked to me for guidance, and I wanted to be fair, supportive, different from what I had left behind. At the same time, I feared slipping into habits shaped by years under Grant's control. Was I pushing too hard? Was I letting ambition harden me? The moments of doubt were always chased away by memories. I could still see his smirk across the desk, hear the dismissive tone in his voice, feel the sting of being told I was replaceable. I relived nights spent fixing disasters he created, the exhaustion of carrying work no one else wanted to touch, the way my loyalty was treated as weakness. Those memories reminded me why I had chosen this path. It dawned on me that this wasn't only about reclaiming my worth. It was about justice for everyone who had been belittled, overworked, and brushed aside. I wasn't standing just for myself anymore. Each decision, each step forward, became an answer to the years of silence we all endured. And that realization made my resolve unshakable. The whispers started slowly, drifting through contacts who still had ties inside the building I once called my workplace. I heard Grant was growing restless, pacing through endless meetings that seemed more like shouting contests than strategy sessions. He was furious about accounts slipping away, unable to accept that the trust he squandered could not be repaired with orders and threats. Every story I heard painted the same picture. Chaos where there had once been control. His temper became legend. Staff described him slamming doors, demanding blind loyalty, and accusing long-term employees of betrayal if they so much as hesitated. That anger didn't inspire fear anymore. It drove people to consider their options. The same workers who once kept their heads down began quietly reaching out to me. Some sent messages late at night, careful not to be noticed. Others called from personal phones, voices heavy with exhaustion. They asked if there might be space for them where I was now. Clara and I discussed each request carefully. We didn't scoop up just anyone. We selected those with skill, integrity, and the drive to build something better. Each new addition strengthened our side and weakened his. With every hire, our foundation grew steadier while his balance slipped further. I could almost see the unraveling from a distance. Finances tightening, trust collapsing, and a leader who no longer inspired confidence but only fear. The company I once poured myself into was being hollowed out from the inside, and the man who thought himself untouchable was losing his grip on everything. Watching it unfold, I didn't feel pity. This wasn't some random misfortune. It was the consequence of years of arrogance, dismissal, and cruelty. For so long he held power by belittling those around him. Now the same people he once disregarded were the ones shaping his downfall. It was clear. Grant was no longer in control, not of his staff, not of his clients, not even of himself. And as he spiraled further, I knew this was only the beginning of the end. The call came out of nowhere. I glanced at the screen, and when I saw Grant's name my stomach tightened, but I answered. His voice was sharp, laced with anger. He demanded to know if I was behind the steady stream of accounts and staff leaving his company. There was no patience in his tone, only panic hidden under rage. I didn't bother pretending. My voice stayed even as I told him the truth. I built your success for years. You told me the door was open and I walked through it. Everything after that is on you. The silence that followed was heavy, and for once, it was him left speechless, not me. Then came the threats. He tried to intimidate me, tossing out warnings about consequences, about how I didn't know who I was dealing with. But the force in his words felt hollow. I could hear it clearly, the edge of desperation he couldn't disguise. He wasn't in control anymore, and he knew it. As he spoke, I felt something shift inside me. A rush of vindication, clean and undeniable. For so long he had held power over me, making me feel small, disposable. Now the roles had reversed, and I didn't need to raise my voice or argue. The truth of the situation was enough. I let him finish, then calmly told him I had nothing more to say. My hand didn't shake as I ended the call. Sitting there in the quiet afterward, I realized I didn't need his approval or fear his threats. I had already won. The balance of power had shifted, and he could never take that away from me again. It didn't take long before the cracks turned into something impossible to hide. Within a few months, news started reaching me from every direction. Long-standing agreements slipped away one after another, and names I recognized from past projects were no longer tied to Holloway Manufacturing. The losses weren't small. They were the very contracts that had once kept the company afloat. Suppliers who had tolerated the chaos for years finally decided enough was enough. They stopped extending credit, stopped answering calls, and moved their business elsewhere. At the same time, people on the inside began leaving in waves. Some sought me out directly, others disappeared quietly, but all had the same reason: they couldn't take his behavior anymore. Investors followed soon after. Without steady income and without faith in his leadership, they pulled their backing. The picture became clear. The foundation he thought was untouchable was crumbling right beneath him. I heard stories of meetings turning into shouting matches, of him pacing the halls late at night, snapping at anyone who crossed his path. Instead of facing his mistakes, he lashed out at everyone else. The paranoia was eating him alive, and it showed. From my place on the outside, I didn't boast or seek attention. There was no need. The outcomes spoke louder than anything I could say. I stayed focused on my own work, my own growth, but in private I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Watching justice play out without lifting a finger to exaggerate or brag felt like the perfect answer to years of silence. By then, my own life looked entirely different. I was secure, respected, and no longer questioning my value. My finances were stable, my confidence restored, and the sense of worth I had lost under him was mine again. Seeing his downfall only confirmed what I already knew: I had chosen the right path. The momentum at my new company only grew stronger. Projects were delivered smoothly, clients praised the organization, and the team I helped shape thrived under clear direction. For the first time, I wasn't invisible or overlooked. My work carried weight, and people treated me as someone whose voice mattered. The recognition was genuine, the pay reflected the effort, and the respect was undeniable. Meanwhile, word spread that Holloway Manufacturing had reached its breaking point. Without reliable contracts, with partners gone and finances drained, the doors finally closed. Grant was left standing in the ruins of what he thought could never fail. He still had his pride, but little else. No one rushed to defend him, and the empire he built on arrogance collapsed into silence. I didn't celebrate loudly, and I didn't need to. My victory wasn't in watching his downfall. It was in everything I had gained since the day I walked away. I had carved a place for myself where I was valued, where my efforts translated into growth instead of exploitation. The contrast between what I endured and what I had now was all the proof I needed. Looking back, I understood something important. What drove me wasn't a hunger to destroy him, but a need to prove to myself that I was never as disposable as he made me feel. His words had tried to reduce me to nothing, but my actions built a reality that showed the opposite. The day I left wasn't the end, it was the beginning. I hadn't just stepped out of his office in anger. I had stepped into a future of my own making. I built a better life, one defined not by his judgment but by my choices. And that was the truest victory of all. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away and building my own path, or should I have tried to stay and fight for change? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so share them below. I'm really curious.